introduced herself.
We'll wait just a couple more minutes, but I don't think we want to wait long because we want to honor your time and the time of everybody else who's able to join. So good evening, everybody. Welcome. Right now, you're muted, and we're going to just begin in just a minute. And if you have some questions, we would encourage you to put them in the chat. And we do want to have time for Ms. Cronenfeld to look at them and answer at least some of them. But thank you for coming. We'll wait just one more minute or two and then get started. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for taking some time out on late on a Thursday evening to learn more about a very critical matter. We are blessed to have Mara Cronenfeld with us from UNRWA USA. I'm Craig Hunter. I'm the pastor at Trinity Presbyterian Church here in Denton, and there is a group within our congregation. Well, there's a group that meets under the auspices of our congregation that includes others from the community that calls itself People for Justice in Palestine and Israel. And we've been at work for over a decade now trying to educate and advocate on issues related to Israel-Palestine. And I want to introduce Raed Ajlouni, who's a member of our group and who knows Mara Cronenfeld. So Raed, would you introduce her?
Yes, so I'm very happy and pleased to introduce Mara Cronenfeld. She's the executive director of the UNRWA, which stands for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. And their work is on the ground in the Palestinian refugee camps and other locations to help those who are in real needs. And I've known Mara for over 3 years now, so time flies. And I have been a member of People for Justice in Palestine and Israel for over 10 years. And both people do really great job. So I'm so happy that we are arranging this, and hopefully Mara today will talk to us about what's happening on the ground, the unfolding catastrophe, and we'll give an opportunity for people to join us with their questions or if they have anything that they'd like Mara to explain. So Mara, the microphone is yours now.
Great. Thank you, Craig and Raed. Thank you so much. And it's really a pleasure to be here. Although, of course, in a very, very, very dark moment, but I have had a couple of opportunities to talk about what's going on the ground in Palestine. And I think it's very important for people to know. We all know that the media often presents one narrative predominantly over other narratives. Maybe that's changing now a little bit with protests around the world and around the USA in support of Palestinians. But I think it's just really important to fill in those gaps that are in the news. And I'm gonna be speaking for a little while, but I do, as both Raed and Craig said, I do welcome questions. You can put them in the chat. I'll try to kind of address questions as as they come, or if it makes sense, kind of in my narrative flow. But we can have a more robust kind of question and answer period when I finish the more formal words I've been thinking about for tonight. So just to start out, as Raed said, UNRWA is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. They use that adjective because it was created in 1949 after the Nakba, the creation of Israel, and the displacement of 700,000 Palestinian refugees. They say Palestine refugees because it was originally meant to serve anybody who was a refugee as a result of the creation of the state of Israel. So whether it was Christians, Jews, Muslims, anybody who was refugee, which is why you may sometimes hear this strange adjective Palestine instead of Palestinian. And it was established in 1948 as a mandate by the United Nations, by the member states of the United Nations, and has been renewed every year since then. So it is UNRWA is a mandate of the international community through the United Nations. UNRWA USA we're actually an NGO. We're just 8 people, although sometimes it feels like we do a lot more work than 8 people because we just have a wonderful team that I get to work with. But US finance regulations basically require that, we're raising awareness about the plight of Palestine refugees, and we're raising funds. And those funds that come to us have to go through something called a discretion and control process before they can go to a foreign entity, in this case, the United Nations. So technically we're an NGO, technically we're separate, but we work hand in hand every day with UNRWA. We're on the phone with them several times a day, and we have a very complex MOU establishing our relationship to one another. But really our role is to raise awareness about the plight of Palestine refugees and the essential humanitarian work that UNRWA does in service of this population, whether food, health, shelter, school education, and of course in disasters, tragic moments like this, humanitarian relief. So that is a quick background on who we are.
Yeah, that's the best hospital here in Texas.
Okay, somebody's on. Okay, great. We just muted somebody. Okay, so lovely to see you all today. So just to tell you a little bit of on the ground, and unfortunately, I don't have to tell this group, it is a catastrophe. As Raed said, it is the situation is horrific, and unfortunately, it's getting more grim daily. I know many of us have seen some of the footage from Jabalia camp today, which was extremely hard to watch, and we know that the bombing continues, and of course the ground invasion unfortunately has begun. There are a total of the Ministry of Health in Gaza has counted over 9,000 fatalities. But this doesn't count, some up to some 2,000 people who are missing, including 1,100 children, I'm afraid. So of those 9,000, 70% are women and children who've died, who've been killed. And then, also, of course, many civilian men. There are over 20,000 injuries. If you're thinking of the whole population of Gaza, there's 2.2 million people. 1.4 million people have been displaced as a result of this war on Gaza. And some 600,000 of those people are in 149 UNRWA buildings, which are serving as shelters. Some of them were meant to be shelters. Some have been makeshift shelters given the emergency situation. And there are basically 4 times what UNRWA was meant to be able to, 4 times the amount of people that UNRWA was meant to be able to serve sitting in those shelters. They are completely overcrowded. And in one case, for example, in Khan Yunis, there is a school that is also used, that has been used as a shelter, that has 22,000 people. It's 10 times the size that it was meant to hold in terms of shelter, and there are 2 bathrooms. It is just impossible to imagine those living conditions. The amount of destruction on the Strip is very difficult to comprehend, the depth of destruction, but I have to share that 45% of the housing units in Gaza have been destroyed already. It is just unfathomable. 246 education facilities have been damaged. 11 bakeries, there have been direct missiles on bakeries. 11 bakeries have been destroyed, and 16 hospitals, 32 health centers. Over 1/3 of the hospitals and nearly 2/3 of the primary health care units, including those that UNRWA operates, have been either bombed so that they don't function, or they've had to shut down because of lack of fuel and electricity. So the humanitarian situation is.
I was like, why is that?
Okay, we need somebody to go on mute. Thank you. Maybe.
I'll find out too.
iPhone.
Now Mara's muted as well.
I got myself unmuted. I'm used to this, too used to this Zoom world. So we we are talking about an absolutely horrific situation that has affected the civilian population so deeply. And there, as everyone knows, humanitarian aid has started to come in, but it's a drop of aid in an ocean of need. There are, I guess, a total of, as of today, 374 trucks that have come in. But there's a lot of details around this humanitarian aid that may not, I don't know how much it's been reported in the news more broadly. But okay, before October 7th, there were 500 trucks a day that went into Gaza that included humanitarian assistance and all the goods to function, of course, because Israel controls all of the borders of Gaza, air, land, and sea. And so any goods had to be brought in from outside. And there were 100 trucks of just food and water. And so we have 374 trucks since October 21st. Absolutely not enough. Then when they get into Rafah, Rafah was not meant to be a border basically serving trucks and convoys and goods. It was those convoys had come in through the Israel border with Gaza, which is of course closed right now. So it is extremely difficult logistically to get those trucks in, to be able to then offload those trucks into secure warehouses where then essentially UNRWA is the organization that then takes these goods and tries to get them to the people in need across the Strip. So there's been a lot of challenges in being able to efficiently handle the goods that come in and get them to those in need. The other reason it's been so difficult is that, of course, fuel has not been let in, and fuel is absolutely essential to run the trucks and the convoys that are going to take those goods and service those goods, from Rafah border across the Strip and to the shelters where people are. So fuel is also essential because fuel is what's absolutely needed to desalinate the water. There's very little clean water available right now. We know, of course, without clean water, waterborne diseases will start and have started from what I understand, including cholera. And then also without fuel, the hospitals, those hospitals are still standing, can't function because, of course, the electricity has already been cut across much of the strip. So we're talking about extremely difficult, unbearable setting, and the bombs continue. And I'll just tell you for a moment, my colleague who knows Hani Al-Mahdoun, who's a dear colleague, and I've known him for a couple of years, and we work very closely together. He has had 14 members of his own family, his extended family, killed. Right now, his mom and his dad and his nieces and nephews are in Gaza City, and they didn't evacuate when they were told to leave to south of Wadi Gaza, and they didn't because they had friends and relatives who'd gone south and were stuck outside. No shelter, no bathrooms, no access to food. And then when Israel said you have to leave the strip south of Wadi Gaza, they ended up bombing the 2 evacuation routes available. So they felt it wasn't safe. So there they are, they're stuck in Gaza City, in their home, but they are facing bombardment. And Hani showed me a picture yesterday of the street right next to his house where it had been thoroughly destroyed. And so every day I wake up in the morning, the first thing is ask Henny, is your mom okay? And this is just, of course, one of the many, many horrific stories we're hearing. We had an intern, we had an intern who worked with us, who was a Fulbright scholar from Gaza. And we just found out that his family, he and his wife and his 3 kids were killed yesterday, or the day before, sorry. So every day we hear more and more stories. 6 out of 8 of our team members are Palestinian. 3 of them have family in Gaza. And so we are very much personally touched by this. And then I myself had the chance to go to Gaza the summer before last and know so many families there. And just saw, frankly, the beauty of people who were able to persevere and enjoy life and smile despite all of the challenges and the hardships put in front of them. So it does feel, this is very personal to all of us, I'm sure to many people in this Zoom today. And then UNRWA itself has had 72 people killed, and 44 UNRWA installations have been damaged, and 7 of them by direct hits. Israel knows exactly where every United Nations installation is. Israel has all the GPS coordinates of every United Nations installation. The blue flag of the UN is on every United Nations installation. And yet there were still 44 buildings hit and damaged, and 7 of them, at least 7, directly hit. And this is a violation of international humanitarian law, one of the many that we've seen happening over the last 26 days. So in terms of what UNRWA is calling for, UNRWA is calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. We have actually on UNRWA USA's website, I'll share the links when I take a pause, which allows anybody in the US to write a letter to Secretary of State Antony Blinken demanding a humanitarian ceasefire immediately. So we'd love for everyone to sign that letter, and then for you to certainly circulate this letter to anybody. It's super easy. You just put your name and you'll get on a letter will go to Secretary Blinken from you. And then, of course, asking for fuel to be let in. This is absolutely necessary for clean water, for hospitals to function, for bakeries to bake bread, and and then, of course, respect for international humanitarian law, which simply has not been happening, let alone the bombing of UN facilities. But of course, the Palestinian people are being collectively punished in this war on Gaza. So that gives you a little bit basics about the horrific situation on the ground. I think the last thing just on Gaza right now is that UNRWA has been able to. So UNRWA's main role right now has been getting those goods and food and hygiene kits that come in through Rafah. Getting their main role is to then distribute those across the Strip. UNRWA has been in Gaza since 1949, so is the longest standing organization there, and has the breadth, the largest organization. It actually has 13,000 Palestine refugees work for UNRWA in Gaza. And then UNRWA has been distributed 3,000 tons of flour. So UNRWA's role is to take this flour that was originally supposed to be part of the food distribution program for those food insecure families in Gaza before this crisis. It's now taking that flour and giving it to bakeries for free, of course, and then those bakeries are baking bread for the communities. UNRWA is also providing bread directly to people in shelters, and then UNRWA is providing. There are basically 4,000 visits to doctors a day, and then 10,000, and then the mobile clinics serve 10,000 patients. They go see them in the different settings in which they are, and then there's psychosocial trauma support as well. So that's the basic on Gaza. Let me slow down. Well, let me say one more thing, and then I'll take a moment to answer any questions about the humanitarian situation. But I also want to pivot to a couple of other points that I wanted to share with you all. I just wanted to say that while all eyes are on Gaza, that there's a lot of horrible things going on in the West Bank, as many of us know. And I just wanted to get the statistics here, but the restrictions on movement are more serious than they've been in so long. And let me just, sorry, 1 second. Let me just pull what I was going to share with you. As of October 7th, there have been, as of just October 7th, there have been 128 people killed in the West Bank, including 35 children. And since October 7th, there's been 1,830 Palestinians arrested in the West Bank. And we have heard, I'm sure many of you have heard of the some of the widespread cruel and inhumane and degrading treatment of some of these detainees. There's also, of course, at least 1,000 Palestinians in prison right now without charge. So in the West Bank, and then the 230,000 some Palestinians who would normally work, who have work permits, who go into Israel and work. Those work permits are not, or have been, they're not functioning right now. Israel's canceled them, so there is a whole population of the West Bank that was dependent upon this income is not getting this income right now. So and then of course there's been a takeover of and forced displacement of I think it's 1,000 people in the West Bank since October 7th, so it is just while the world has its eye on Gaza, we're seeing the forced displacement, the dispossession of Palestinians in the West Bank. It is just horrible, and seems somehow premeditated to do this while the world is looking at Gaza.